introduction first, and then
Mhm.
and then we can get started with the Q&A. But hopefully everyone can see my screen. So here at entry level, hopefully you know who we are by now, but if you don't, we help you learn and get experience so that you can get hired. And these are the courses we offer. Oh, we actually have a new one called Python, so that's exciting. Some house rules before we start: please be respectful, don't spam the chat, keep your mics muted. If you have questions for our wonderful panelist, Anthony, you can send them in the chat and I'll be saying them out loud. So I want to know what level you're at before we start, just so we can kind of tailor the questions to you. So are you a complete beginner to tech and UX design? Have you taken a few courses, maybe Anthony's UX design course at entry level? Have you landed an internship, or are you currently working in tech? So feel free to put it in the chat what level you're currently at, just so we can better personalize this experience for you. Okay, looks like some people have taken a few courses. Oh, someone has also worked in tech, so that's awesome. Most people are complete beginners. Okay. Anthony, it sounds like your book is perfect for this audience, because I'm assuming your book is for complete beginners.
Yeah, it's like for a bunch of different audiences, but definitely one of the primary audiences is a complete beginner. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll talk more about the book later. But speaking of the book, we have a giveaway happening right now. It's over on all of entry level social media accounts. So if you tag some friends, you might get a chance to win a free copy of Anthony's book. So I'll link our Instagram so you can enter. Here it is. But I think it's on pre-orders right now. So if you're the winner, you might have to wait a few weeks before getting your copy.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. Again, a little bit about us. We want to reskill 1 billion people into careers they love by 2030, and you're helping us with our mission by being here. And these are our available courses. Anthony is our instructor for the UX designer course, and I recently just took it, and it was really fun. I made my first UX portfolio. I'm so proud of it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I filmed the whole experience too. It's on our Instagram. But okay, let me attach
Really, I'll have to check that out later. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, it was the whole reason I took the course. Okay, so I just linked the Instagram giveaway in the chat. Oh, it didn't show us the link. And I believe, Anthony, you mentioned there's a discount code as well. So stick around to the end and then we can share it, because I want people to get the advice first, and then
Right.
yeah. But this event is also being recorded. So if your internet drops out, or if you have to go because it's too late in your time zone, we'll send it to you via email. Oh, and then this is what you can expect if you take our courses, including the UX design course that Anthony teaches. You get a certificate, a portfolio project. I was just talking about my UX portfolio. We'll answer some questions about what you should put in your portfolio later, and then community feedback. Okay, so that's all for my long intro. Anthony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Anthony. I'm a designer. I've been doing this for a while now. Currently working at Amazon on Amazon Music. I have a wide history in games, education, and entertainment over the course of my 10 plus career. In my spare time, I teach, I tutor, I mentor. Entry level. You did that one. Teaching at Pratt in the fall. I've taught at CUNY, and I wrote a book. This thing right back here.
That's awesome. Actually, I'm curious, like, what got you into UX design in the first place? You've had like 10 plus years of experience, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Across like just design in general. So like there was some time that I had as like a game designer where I like had my own company. I made my own board games. And I like funded those through Kickstarter. And then that got me like into like design all up. And then from there, I went to Nickelodeon to work on a show called Blue's Clues. If people are familiar with that show, some might be in the audience, some might not be. But it's this type of show where like you talk at the TV and the TV talks back at you, and like it's like a linear piece of content, but like you can sort of interact with the TV. It's like that, but like on your phone, so you could like actually like interact instead of just like shouting back and forth with the TV. Which and that's what really got me into UX. Like thinking about how to design for a younger audience that's like going to be on their phone interacting with this stuff instead of watching it on TV. The TV says something to you, you say something back or you don't, and the TV just goes on.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know you did that. Wow, technology.
It's actually a really fun, engaging form of content. If you want to check it out, it's called Play Along Video by Nickelodeon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's available on their like Noggin app.
That's so cool. So it sounds like what got you into it was like, games a little bit, like the fun stuff. But what would you suggest for people who are not sure if UX design is for them, but they're kind of considering it?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like trying stuff. If like you're not sure if you want to do something, like what's like the leanest, like easiest way that you could like test it out. That could be taking a course with entry level or somewhere else, up to you. It could be reading an article. It could be just like sort of like dabbling and testing it out. Like if you want to be like a chef, right, or like someone who's like really good at cooking, you'd start by like making eggs, or you'd start by like baking bread, or like some small like little way to do that. So that'd be my recommendation. Can you do a project? Can you open up Figma and like make a couple screens? Can you try a couple interviews? Like testing it out in little ways.
That is so true, because I used to think I wanted to get into UX design because it looked so glamorous and fun. And then I took a UX course and then I did UX research. I loved UX research, which I thought I would hate. And I hated the actual UX design. So now I'm in marketing.
Fair enough. Yeah. And that the skills you got there are really helpful, right? Like you understand like your customer, you understand like who you're trying to sell to, and the psychology of that. So by doing that little test you did, you found what you like, and you like got better at it at the same time. And it wasn't like the thing that you thought it would be. So
yeah, that's so true. I just had an event with an entry-level student who took like 6 of our courses, and he got a job and said that nothing he learned was wasted. So even if his job is unrelated, he was still like the venture capital course. He wasn't in venture capital, but it helped him learn more about businesses for his current role. So that's so true. Okay, what about common misconceptions about UX design? What do you think are the most common?
yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is like it's purely visual. Like that's a really big misconception that you are going to be only making wireframes, and like that's all that like your partners want from you is just like what does it look like. That's like part of a misconception of like what a UX designer does. Like give me the wireframes, like I want those. Is like what some people might think it is, but it's so much more than that. It's like how do you make the solution? How do you understand your customers and try to like design the solution for them? There's so much that goes into being a UX designer that I initially thought it was also like predominantly and majoritarily about just making wireframes, but there's so much like else that comes before that of like understanding the problem you want to solve, figuring out how to solve that problem, the ideation that goes into that. There's just so many things that go into it. So if you don't necessarily like the visual component of design, like if you feel like you're not good at it, or like like you have tried graphic design and it's like not for you, don't let that scare you away from this field, because that almost scared me away from this field until I talked to another designer and they're like, yeah, wireframes are super important. They are, but it's not like the only thing that's a part of this.
Okay. So main takeaway is if you're not good at the UI, like graphic design side, then it's fine to still pursue UX design, because that's not what UX design is all about.
Yeah. And I'd say just to like double down on that, it's like, so some of my jobs, I've partnered with like visual designers who like would take my lower fidelity stuff that I've made and bring them to that high fidelity and injecting the brand principles and values and polish towards that. So, with the advent of design systems, some of this is on rails for you from like a visual perspective. There's a lot of patterns you're able to like observe and borrow from other places online and their design systems. So like if you feel like you can't do the visual part, don't let that necessarily like scare you away from this field.
Okay. And then just to clarify, wireframes, like what are wireframes for people who don't know?
Great question. Yeah, I suppose we should talk about that. So like when you have your phone, you can't see my phone, but or the digital interfaces like Zoom that we're using now, or YouTube or whatever. Someone has to like make what that looks like and make how that functions. And that would be at like a blueprint level, kind of this thing called a wireframe, which if you think about building a house, you need blueprints to build that house. It's a similar comparison for building a digital product. We call them wireframes.
Oh my gosh, I see why you're an instructor now, because that's such a good analogy. If you've taken
Thank
the
you.
course, like you can just tell Anthony is a good teacher. But I actually have an example of wireframes here from the UX course I took.
Oh, perfect.
So this is what the wireframes I made look like. It's just
Fun.
sketches. Like you can tell I'm not an artist. This is just very low fidelity, or like, how do I define low fidelity?
Yeah, I mean, we could go into it a little bit. So low fidelity is kind of like a sketch of like, you know, black and white, very abstract. You're trying to like get the point across, like the general idea of what you're trying to build. You're not like making sure it looks incredibly visually perfect. You're trying to do this in like a low, iterative, lean way to, try it out, so to speak, that we were talking about before. You're trying to try out your solution, and by doing that, you get a better sense of it just by like making this lower fidelity thing. But even when you flash that up just for like a brief second, I could kind of get a sense that you were like making something for mobile. It felt like it could have been an app. Like that's like the sense that I got. And that's the point of like a lower fidelity. It doesn't look as hi-fi. It doesn't look as done as like a real product would.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because sometimes people can go right into Figma and start designing, but then they figure out they're making the wrong thing. So it's better to go with a sketch first. Oh, it sounds like people have some compliments for the UX design course. They found interesting things that they didn't know they would like UX research, how the course helps them feel less overwhelmed because it took things step by step. So that's really nice to hear. Okay, we have some questions from the audience, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask if you had any advice for someone who is just starting out, because there's so many resources online and it's overwhelming. So is there like a step-by-step suggested guide that you would recommend?
A couple, actually. I mean, the entry level course is fantastic for doing that. That's kind of how that's structured, of like me taking you through it. This book is also really good for that, and I would strongly recommend checking it out. So one of the reasons I say that, though, is because I've taken like the learnings that I've had from like trying to study this. I actually used to like go to a boot camp myself for UX design, and I've taken like how I went through that process and learned myself and applied it to this book. So it really is like a step-by-step, you can't see the subtitle, it's there, a step-by-step guide to designing user experiences. So the way that it's structured is you get like a view of like what design is, like what does UX mean, what does UI mean, like what are all these design thinking processes, and then you go through an entire process end to end. So you go through each and every individual like step of the design thinking process, and then we go in a little bit deeper, and you actually do exercises for each of those steps. So I show you a theory, I show you an example of the theory. You do exercises based on those examples in that theory. And then at the back of the book, I show you what I would have done or what I could have done for a solution. And we follow that all the way through research and ideation and testing and building that prototype and delivering a solution. To the extent that if you do all the exercises, you'll get a case study at the end and a kickstart to like your portfolio. So it's almost like a little like boot camp in a pocket kind of. I designed it in that way because I wanted to learn in that way. A lot of the books that I read were very like theory heavy, but not like example heavy or like practicality heavy of like, okay, here's like what you actually do. Here's what it actually looks like. Go apply it. And here's what I did. Like that's how I wanted to structure this book. So yeah, this one has step-by-step in the title and I would recommend it.
I love it because the most useful books I've read about technology and breaking into tech, it's been stuff about like real world examples, and entry level courses are like that too. But the case studies help me a lot, like examples, but I think you take it one step further where you have to like actually apply it to your life and with like exercises, right?
Mm-hmm. So, that's right. Yeah. I think when I'm learning, I really like applied learning. That's what I try to do for like my courses and my content. Not only just introduce something to you and show you an example, but like now you do it. It's like an invitation, because I feel like people learn a lot better when they are active participants in that learning journey rather than, passive readers that don't get the opportunity to apply what they learn to a project.
Yeah, that's so true. Because sometimes I read books, nonfiction books, and I want to learn, but then I just forget it after. So like actually applying, so you have like that experience is going to be so helpful for your job search. And also, I don't know if you're seeing this, Anthony, but so many people are complimenting your UX design course. People are amazed about what they're able to do in 6 weeks. So I love that. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I see one question in the comment. Can anyone who has no idea about design use this book? Yeah, if you're like a beginner to UX design, this book's for you for sure. We introduce those concepts and walk you through projects to get exposure to that.
Yeah, and speaking of the book, in case you missed it at the beginning, we do have a coupon code we're going to share with you at the end of this call. And also we have a giveaway happening on our Instagram where you can apply to win one of 3 copies of Anthony's new book, but it's on pre-order right now, so you might have to wait a few weeks to get it. So here,
yeah, it comes out August 3rd, and then I think to other vendors it comes out like a week or 2 after that. So
yes, and can people pre-order right now?
they can, yeah. I mean, if they go, I mean, I could drop the link in the chat if that's
Let me find
what I should do.
I swear I have the link is in our event description, so I'll pull it up. So if you don't want to wait for the giveaway, I'm picking winners later today, so right after this event. But if you don't want to wait and you want a guaranteed copy of this book, that is the Amazon link. All right, okay, let's get back to the questions. We have a lot of people who are beginners, but also changing careers. So let's say someone is in marketing, data analysis, or product management. What advice would you have for them if they're trying to learn UX?
So what is the advice? So I actually am a career changer myself. I started in law and economics. So like that was how I got my start. And I mentioned that because I think in order to get your start in design, if you are like a career transitioner or a changer, you can bring your past over into your future. We talked about this a little bit before, how you took the UX design course and you're like, okay, like I don't want to make the wireframes, but this research is really awesome. I'm going to apply it to my job, my next job. You can do the same thing. So when I was at the law firm that I was working at, I spent hours and hours and hours like writing. I had to write all these like economic reports that describe various markets and like really dive deep into how those markets are structured and understand the competitors, doing competitive analyses, that types of things. This is really helpful for doing research on a UX design project where you might look at competitors or understand market trends or really like dive deep on an industry before you design for that industry. And by taking those skills that I've learned from at the law firm, I apply them to Amazon, where I work today, where it's a very like deep writing culture, for example. Like you have to do a lot of writing at Amazon in order to be able to express your ideas and communicate them. So being a good writer actually really helps because you're able to express ideas when you're not there, present, advocating for them. And that's important as a designer because you need to express your ideas when you're not there, advocating for them. So I think you can take your past and apply it to your future if you're transitioning. When I was at the bootcamp, we had several different designers and they got their first jobs based on what they had done in the past. We had a yoga instructor. She went to Equinox. We had an art therapist. She went to a wellness startup. Like these industries that they had been a part of helped guide their transition and design for people in those industries because they had that context. They understood what those people in those industries wanted, like those customers, and they were able to apply that to their designs. And that's what you got to do as a designer. You have to know that.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like when people are changing careers, they think they're starting from scratch. Even if you have never had a career in your life, you think you're starting from scratch, but no, like you've lived life, you've had all these experiences. You just gotta
totally.
like figure out a way to apply them.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. We have a question about your book again, Anthony. So
Sure,
is it only available on Amazon or can people find it somewhere else?
There actually is another place that's available. There's my publisher Pearson is also listing it on their website, and I just put a link in the chat. That's the website that the code will apply to, so the code won't work for Amazon. But yeah, that I tried that one. If that doesn't, Amazon doesn't work. The nice thing about this one as well is you'll get it a little bit sooner because it takes 1 to 2 weeks for Amazon to populate. Whereas, they're the ones who made it. So it'll be up sooner.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so all the links are in the chat right now, but I am also going to be putting them on the event recording and our website. So it'll be everywhere. Don't worry about missing anything. Okay, perfect. We do have a few more like specific questions. I feel like some of these questions sent in were a bit more advanced. So I'm going to save those to the end and go back to some more beginner related questions.
Sure.
So what would you say is the most important skill for a UX designer to have?
There's a lot. So it's hard to choose just one. I mean, you have to be good at like, design. So you have to like understand affordances and patterns and everything else that goes into like making the product you're making. I think some of the bigger ones that like aren't necessarily as obvious. So like, are you good at visual design? That's really helpful for being a UX designer. I know it's not like the only thing you need, but it does help for you to be able to make things look good and clean and usable and all that type of stuff. I think some of the like underrated skills or skills that might not be obvious as at first. I think communication is extremely important. Being able to communicate with your users and your customers, being able to communicate with the people around you, to be able to advocate for your ideas and understand what they're trying to look for in an experience. You got to talk to product managers, you got to talk to developers, you got to talk to business owners, you have to talk to other designers. There's a lot of like communication that occurs in building a product. Building products is a team sport, and being good at that sport requires good communication. I also think storytelling is something that we hear time and again of like being really important as a soft skill. Being able to paint the picture for your design. Like you might make a wireframe, an example of your design, and it doesn't necessarily communicate the idea fully. So you have to paint that picture. You have to tell how someone will use it, how they'll encounter it, how they'll move around it. So being able to tell a story for your designs and for the customers and users you're trying to design for is extremely valuable as a skill. I think it's one of the most valuable, actually.
That's so interesting that you mentioned communication, because I feel like even if you end up not pursuing design, communication is a skill that'll benefit you in any career.
Yep.
And I liked how when I took the UX design course at entry level, there was a peer review and then also like the Discord server. So Anthony, I don't know if you're in our Discord, but like we were kind of talking to our peers there, asking for advice, getting support. And then I feel like with the peer review task, I was able to practice my critique skills to look at other people's portfolios. And the feedback I got on my portfolio was super nice too. So that's always fun to see. So to summarize, communication, storytelling, design skills, of course, and building products is a team sport. Did I miss anything?
No, I think those are some of like the bigger ones.
Okay, perfect. And then another question that was sent in, a lot of people ask this, is as a UX designer, do you need to learn how to code?
Man, I hate coding. It's not something you need to know how to do, but it's kind of like think of it as like speaking another language. It's really helpful to be able, if you're going to go travel to other places, to be able to at least converse like a little bit in that language. Like where is like the town square, like where can I find groceries, like that type of stuff. So being able to like have the ability to communicate with the people who will be coding it, because you're not an engineer, right? Like you aren't the person who's actually building the experience from a technical perspective. You're building it from a creative, idealistic ideation perspective. So you don't need to know how to code, but knowing how to communicate with those that do code is extremely valuable. What's possible. You're able to speak with them about any sort of technical concerns or constraints that occur as you're trying to design and create your solution. So I wouldn't say you have to do the coding yourself, but at least knowing a little bit about it allows you to be more fluent in those conversations and build something more easily and communicate better.
Okay. That is so true. I feel like I tried to learn how to code so many times, but I failed. And then I found the solution, which was no code tools, which is like literally the same kind of framework, except so now I'm like able to talk to developers like, hey, like padding and like, CSS styles.
Sure.
So if anyone's interested in taking our no code course after the UX course, I just linked it in the chat. I took that course as well. It was really fun.
Awesome.
Okay, let's move on to like more job search related stuff. So
sure.
As we know, you end up with a portfolio after taking an entry-level course, but do you have any tips for what other projects people should do to stand out?
Yeah, if we think about like the ideal case study, right? Like your employers are going to want to see several things. They're going to see your ability to work with business owners and stakeholders. They're going to see your ability to work with developers. They're going to see something that actually shipped. They're going to want metrics around how your solution performed. And they're going to want to see you do end-to-end design. Like those are like probably some of like the most ideal aspects you can have on a case study, because it shows a close approximation of what you'll actually be like on the job. That's what these people are worried about, right? Like they want to reduce risk in hiring you. So in all the ways that you can show that you are the best candidate because you've done it before, and paint that picture and tell the story and communicate that to your prospective employers, the better off you'll be for your job. So that would be like the ideal case study. Now you come out of an entry-level course, or you read a book or whatever, you work on your personal project, it's hard to get that. So my recommendation would be to try to simulate that as many ways as you can. Can you make something for someone else, like a friend? Can you work on a volunteer project? There are many places online where you can find volunteer work and try to do that and actually like build something for someone else and get metrics around it. Is there a small business in your neighborhood? A lot of restaurants, for example, don't necessarily think about their digital solution. Maybe you can help them by talking with them and making a website for them. You just have to try to approximate the actual position as well as you can in your work, so that it's as clear as possible to your employer what you'll deliver for them, were you to actually be on that job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there are so many good gems in there. So I'm going to summarize what the ones I think are most important. So first, metrics, super important because it shows the results you've achieved, not just what you've done, but like the impact that you had for the company or projects. So always include that to stand out. End-to-end design. So make sure you do like the whole project. Employers want to reduce risk. That is so true.
They really do.
Yeah. And then simulating a work environment. One thing I want to add on to that is I think you should take on projects related to an industry you like. So like if someone was a yoga instructor before, maybe they could design a new website for a yoga studio or something. So if you want to work in that industry, make sure you take on projects related to it. Okay, so we have some questions about the length. So how long would it take to build out your portfolio? Like what's the expected timeline?
Yeah, that's so tough. To give like an average or to say like it'll take you this long, because everyone's so different. I've had some students who have the time and bandwidth to like really dive in and crank out a lot of work really quickly and a lot of learning. I've had other people who have families and jobs and they're doing this in a part-time and they don't have the same amount of time. And then people learn at different rates. So it's hard to say like specifically you'll get a job in this amount of time afterwards. I've had so for my boot camp, right? I had some people, it took them a month after their 3 months of intensive learning. Yeah, they got it in like a month. It was incredibly quick. I've had some people get their job before they even finished the boot camp because they networked really aggressively and they knew people in various places and that helped them. I've had some people take a year or two after their boot camp to get a job because they were focused on their family and it like took a long time for them to make their transition. So it's hard to say like a specific amount of time, and it really depends on how much you put in. What I can say is the more you put in, the more you get back. What I've seen time and again is the people that really invest in their future and spend time trying to carve out a path for themselves, not just in design, but in tech in general, you really have a lot of agency in moving forward in your career. So for me, I spent a lot of time like investing in pushing further and further in my career. And I've seen that growth and I've seen that return on my investment. Whereas others, I've seen them not spend that time investing and they have like a slower growth trajectory, for example. So what you put in is what you get.
Yeah, that's so true because I do a lot of interviews with successful entry-level students. And the one thing that's always consistent with them is they put in that effort. They have a growth mindset. They're always learning and investing in themselves. And I used to try to self-learn myself on like YouTube. And let me just say, it took me a lot longer than I should have. I'm kind of embarrassed by all the years wasted. And then I took an entry-level UX course and my portfolio was done in 6 weeks. I'm still shocked at how fast that was.
Yeah, but like the structured learning is so helpful. And that's like one of the benefits of entry level, right? Like you have that structure, you have that accountability, you have the peers. That's why I went to my boot camp. I wanted like classes every day, people I was learning alongside, people pushing me forward because I knew that would accelerate my growth and keep me accountable, and I would invest in it. I think about it like going to the gym, like if you keep lifting weights, you will get muscles. You might not get it that day. You might not get it the next day, but like you will. Like it's going to happen. You just have to believe in that, and you have to keep investing it.
Yeah, that's so true. But I go to the gym a lot and I'm still not able to beat my sister in arm wrestling. So I just need to work harder.
One day.
Yeah. Now we have a specific question about a portfolio. So do you have any
Mhm.
recommendations for platforms on where people can make their portfolio?
Um, that there's actually like a whole subchapter in my book about it, but my recommendations, just like at a high level, would be how much investment do you want to make in your portfolio? It's like a digital product in and of its own. On the one hand, you could go very deep and do a lot of work and use some no code tools like Webflow or low code tools. You could use Sempless as another one if like you really want to like customize everything and make it like really amazing. You don't necessarily have to, like you could also just do a portfolio PDF. It doesn't have to be some like big crazy website online. You can also use website builders that are designed to make websites really quickly so that you don't have to spend a lot of time and investment in the actual creation of your website. So Squarespace would be an example of that. Wix is another example of that. It's really up to you how much time and polish you want to put in your portfolio. If you feel like you need to make this amazing, beautiful portfolio, you can, and that'll attract certain level or caliber of employers. Or you could just like make a PDF and send that to people if you want to have a little bit more control over your digital footprint or don't want to invest a lot of time in making that portfolio.
Yeah, I feel like people overthink portfolios a lot, but like I'll share my portfolio for entry level. This was like I got scared because I was like, I have to make this portfolio amazing, but no, you should treat it like a UX project and like start, with a wireframe. So with a guide from entry level, this is what I made because I'm a marathon runner and I was passionate about this space. And it's just I took a template and it's just PowerPoint slides. It was very easy to do. And you can see I screenshotted all my Figma stuff here. Um, and
Yeah, this is the
then,
portfolio PDF. Exactly.
yeah, exactly. It didn't have to be a website. I didn't have to spend hours building something on Webflow, which we have a course for if you want to learn. But yeah, super easy. To start out, I don't think you need too much because you can always improve it.
Was that from UX Design 1?
Yeah, it was.
That's great. There
Thank
you go. That's an
you.
example of what you'll get if you take UX Design 1.
Yeah, I'm so surprised I did that in 6 weeks. And I actually fell behind, and all that work that you saw in my portfolio was done in the last like 2 days. Um, but the community was very supportive. When I submitted my portfolio, I was like so happy and I shared it in the community, and everybody was like, congratulations. So that was so nice.
Awesome.
Okay, let's move back onto the job search stuff. So you work for Amazon, and before that, I think you worked for Vimeo, which is a video platform. So
That's
do
right.
you have any advice on how to land jobs at those big companies or even internships?
Yeah. So not internships because I never actually had an internship. So
What?
yeah, I'm not. No, I wasn't good at getting internships in college. That just wasn't a good skill set of mine. So I can't help you there. But like in getting a job, and this I guess would apply to an internship. It's really about like communicating to your employers just that you're a really good fit, and that's just simulating as much as you can the work that they're going to want to see from you. So that's a good way to think about it. I also think, the same things we said about communication. That's really important. Developing your skill sets if you can should demonstrate that you have those capabilities. And then as far as like the networking piece, like I would say it's important to like build that out over time, not necessarily while you're looking for a job, but also while you're not looking for a job. Just try to like make genuine, real connections and see where that leads you. That's been my strategy rather than necessarily like spamming a bunch of recruiters saying, "Do you have a job?" It's more like developing the relationships. If I'm reached out to by a recruiter, for example, and I don't necessarily want a job right now, I'll send them other people that might want a job, and then like I establish a relationship rather than view it as like a transactional thing that happens, only if I need something. Like try to like be helpful in the way that you can be, so that that can carry forward, as sort of like karma.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one thing that I would add onto that is to post your work everywhere. So hopefully if you've taken an entry-level program, you've come out with a portfolio you're proud of and you improve on that based on the feedback you get after our peer review, then just post it everywhere on social media. I have a story from an entry-level student. I'll link it in the chat. His name is Eric. He got a job after entry level because he posted his work everywhere on Twitter, Behance, I think also LinkedIn, and I think someone found him through that and he landed a job.
Wow, amazing. I have a story about that. It's a little bit more analog than digital. Coming out of college, the first job that I got for the law firm was from a babysitting flyer. Like that's like actually like I put up, I'm a babysitter. I will tutor your children in economics and whatever. And then a partner at the law firm saw it and was like, "Oh, you're an economist. Would you like to work at our law firm?" So really, just posting your stuff and just like being engaged and talking to others like helps a lot.
Yeah, especially being part of communities like entry levels Discord. We post a lot of events like this one, job alerts, and a bunch of opportunities really. But are there any other UX design communities you recommend, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, ADP list. If people aren't familiar with that, it might actually be really helpful for a lot of this audience. Actually, it's a great place to find mentorship. It allows you to connect with other designers, and there's like a strong community there as well.
Yeah, we actually have a partnership with them. So I sent
Oh,
our
there
partner
you go.
link in the chat. Okay, awesome. So mentorship, super important, networking, developing relationships. But what about when it comes to the interview? Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, definitely do your research ahead of time, on the company, on the people that you'll be speaking with. Just try to understand who they are and any overlap, and why you want to work there. Be very mindful, and it depends on like what stage of the interview, because there's various stages. Like there's like the call with the recruiter, which is just like getting basics about the job. There's a call with the hiring manager, which is like understanding more about the position and if like there's good working styles there. Then there's like, let's review your work, which might also be with the hiring manager or with the whole team, where you open up your portfolio or you make a presentation. So there's like different like advice I would give for each of those. At a high level, I would just say come prepared for any of those conversations, and the way you do that is having a clear understanding of what you want, some good questions that allow you to understand what the company would offer and what it would be like working there. And then specifically for like the portfolio presentation, being very aware of like how long it takes for you to talk about your work and staying on time with that while communicating what it is you want to show. So it would depend on what phase we're talking about.
Okay, so one other thing I would say is to, practice your storytelling skills and tell your unique personal story to help yourself stand out. But yeah, researching the company is a big one. I would also recommend reaching out to mentors on like ADP list to ask them to help you go through it, because practice makes perfect. Okay, so we have a few questions. So like I had some that were more like related to the industry. But since there are a lot of beginners here who may have just done a course or they have never done a course before, like what are the next steps you recommend them to do like after this workshop?
Like after the call we're having today?
Yes.
Yeah. This would be next steps for people like just getting started, right?
Yeah.
I
So
think
maybe they've taken a course or two, but they haven't like gotten jobs.
Yeah. So if you've taken a course or two, if you haven't made things from that course, like if it's you were more of like a passive participant than like an active one, like making stuff from it, definitely make stuff. Like get exposure to making things and making that case study and portfolio, because a lot of jobs, especially entry level ones, require you demonstrating that you can do the work and showing that via portfolio. Even like the highest senior level ones require it as well. So make sure you have like something you can share and show those things. Outside of that, it's just practicing and reading and like doing a little bit of everything. Unfortunately, you have to network. You have to like keep up on your skills. You have to like learn the new things. You have to read the articles and practice in Figma or whatever tool you use, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of like little tiny things you need to do at once, and just general upkeep and maintenance of that. So it can be like a little bit challenging to do that, especially when you think about burnout, when you think about like, there's so many things that I could learn, like which one do I focus on? Take it really slow. Take it like you would a marathon. You're not sprinting to an outcome. You're working gradually towards it until you finally get to, beat your sister in arm wrestling or whatever your goals are. So
Oh, I'm loving these analogies. The marathon one, the speaking a different language one, they really help me understand. And that's why I think most people should take a UX design course, because Anthony's teaching is pretty good. Another thing that I would add on to what you said is I think for all the product and project managers here, you should like project manage your career. So set a timeline, set some goals, set the scope, be very clear about what you're going to learn and when. And I think that might make it less overwhelming. I actually had a talk with a product manager and she said, oh, in 6 months, I'm going to change to another job. And then like I reach out to like 10 people every day on LinkedIn. It was very structured. And that's how she was able to succeed and get a job in like 6 months from a completely different career before.
Wow, impressive.
I'll link that interview in the chat and in the recording because that was so inspiring. Like so many people were commenting, and then I think someone watched the recording and literally 2 hours later they landed a role just by applying the advice. So you really gotta apply everything you learn and take action. So after this workshop, don't just do nothing. You have to take action. Okay, I'll link that in the chat. So speaking of what to learn, for people who've mastered the fundamentals, what are your thoughts on trends in UX? So like AI, virtual reality,
Yep.
animation, 3D, like what should people learn?
All of it. I'm kidding. What are some good trends? I would say, if you're just getting started, fundamentals are probably better than trends. Like how do I make sure I know like a button and all the states of those buttons and what happens like when I scroll a website or open an app and stuff like that. If you're already there, like, feel comfortable there and want to like keep pushing further, I think some good trends are definitely around like no code. Like there's a lot of no code tools that you could really like leverage and use. I think AI is at the forefront of everyone's mind right now, no matter what industry you're in, and learning more about that. So, for example, Figma announced at Config that they had acquired an AI tool. So that's going to be coming to Figma at some point. So understanding like the power of these tools, the ethics of these tools, those types of things would be really important in order to stay on top of those trends. Other trends, I can't really think of too. I mean, like AI is dominating a lot of the conversation right now. But yeah, just staying on top of the tools and the announcements of those. And I'd say reading on medium.com is really helpful. That's a place I also write as well. But on Medium, there's a lot of really good resources around people who do look at these trends and write about them. So one of the trendier places you could go is a place called UX Collective. That's a great blog on Medium. It's really good at identifying those trends and like talking about them. And they come out with like this amazing recap called the State of Design every year. And that's like a really useful recap to check out the trends that they project and the trends that had come in the year prior.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to link all of this in the show notes and also email it out to everyone. But that's really good insight. Do you think AI would take over UX designers' jobs though?
This is a great question, right? Like no one really knows the answer for sure. But if I had to guess, in the same way, I think of AI as kind of like a calculator, right? Like you can have these really powerful super tools that allow you to accelerate your jobs and your professions. But in the same way that a calculator didn't destroy accounting as an industry, I don't think AI is going to destroy UX design as an industry. Will people use it as a replacement tool for some of the functions that a UX designer would do? Yeah, probably. It can definitely help around ideation and iteration and speeding things up or looking at common patterns or getting like really stunning photography or whatnot. But I don't think a artificial intelligence would be able to simulate the same things that a person would do with a calculator. Like part of being a UX designer is more than just making that picture. It's all the thought that goes into the research behind making that picture. And at some point, someone's going to have to write those prompts anyway. And it might just be a UX designer that does that.
Oh my gosh, these analogies are so good. I think that finally made sense to me. So thanks for sharing.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have some other questions about the portfolio. So how many case studies is enough to land an entry-level role?
One. If you have a really good case study and it's really comprehensive and it hits all those notes that I was talking about before, like you have the person you worked for, you like built it with devs and communicated with them, you iterated on it, and it shows really good thinking, it's end to end, you have metrics, like that might be the only thing that you need. You don't necessarily need that many. Now, is more better? Yeah, because you show that variety, you hit different employers. Maybe you have one project around fitness, you have another project around finance, and you're sort of casting a wider net. So you might see better success. Some companies do also want to see like 2 to 3 projects in a portfolio presentation. So, it's better to have more, but do you need more? Not necessarily.
So for beginners who are just sending their portfolios to companies, 2 to 3
Mhm.
of the best projects, even if you've done more than that, is enough.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they're not going to have enough time to look at all of your work because they're looking at a bunch of different other candidates as well.
Yeah, I think empathy as a skill that UX designers have, you need to apply it to your job search too. Think from the perspective of the employer. They're not going to want to read a bunch of
Mhm.
projects. Okay, perfect. One more question for you. So,
Sure.
do you have any specific insights from your book that you'd like to share with us?
I could share my favorite subchapter. Yeah.
Sure.
There's a concept that I learned in the creation of this book called cognitive overload. It sounds like a really fancy, scary topic, but really what it means is like this idea that, as we process information and take things in, we get more and more overloaded to the extent that we might like not be able to process something if there's too much. So think about like a glass of water, right? If you have a glass of water and you start filling it with stuff, it's going to keep filling and filling and filling until it overflows. And that's how cognitive overload works. The way that we bring in information to ourselves is we hear things, we see things, we smell things, the senses that come in, and that's stored in our short-term memory. And we're trying to process short-term memory, compare it to long-term memory. And then some of the stuff like actually sticks with us and some of it goes out. So if you overwhelm that short-term memory, if you like fill your cup with a ton of water, you won't be able to like process something. And it's really important to understand this concept because if you make something as a UX designer or anyone, and you're trying to share that with someone else, if it's too overwhelming, if it's too stimulating, there's too many colors, the way in which you communicate various levels of interactivity is too confusing, your users are going to be cognitively overloaded, and then their brains will explode too. So like you have to understand this concept, and I talk about it a little bit in the book. And I never really like thought about it that way before, of like this concept of overstimulation or what have you, influencing how people experience a product.
Yeah, I feel like that's what happened to me a lot because I wanted to learn UX design, but there were so many resources out there that I didn't do anything because I didn't know where to start. So taking a course helped me because I needed that structure. Um, okay,
Yeah, and
now,
that's like another thing
yeah,
the book provides as well. I think the structure is really important, and I think just like being able to learn from examples. I've read a lot of books, and it's really helpful when they provide examples because it like
yeah,
serves as an anchor point. And I saw that like some design books that I read like didn't really necessarily provide enough examples for those learnings to stick, and that's what I tried to do here.
yeah, exactly. And I think this is a good time to share that discount code for your book. Could
Sure,
you
yeah.
just put it in the chat and say it out
Absolutely.
loud?
So if you go to Peach Pit, which is Pearson's website, and if you use the following code, which is Conta, Conta, I believe it is either active now or it is active next week when the book comes out. But you will get a percentage off on the ebook. So you will get not the physical one, unfortunately, but the ebook will be cheaper for you.
Wait, is that contact all caps or like all lowercase? Or does it matter?
Capital Conta.
Okay, so it has to be a capital C.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I haven't like tried the code yet because I haven't needed to use it. But I'm pretty sure if Conta doesn't work, then capital Conta or some variation of it should fully function.
Okay. Um, Sounds good. Okay, now we're in the last 10 minutes and we have some
Mhm.
more specific questions, but I
Sure.
think what's more helpful is if people have specific questions, where would you recommend they go? Is it like ADP list? I don't know if you're available to talk about it on LinkedIn. I would recommend going to our
Yeah.
Discord community. So
Yeah, I think if you have specific questions that I don't answer, I'm sure there's a lot of people in entry level that could be like really helpful in the community to be able to answer those questions for you. I might be able to answer one or two questions if you want to message me on LinkedIn, so we can see if I'm able to help you there. So yeah, those are probably my recommendations. And yeah,
yeah.
just talking to the entry level crew.
Yeah, so our email is support@entrylevel.net if you want to reach out with more specific questions. And then I think I can share a link to our Discord community as well. It's open to not just current students, but also others. Let me find it. And Anthony, is it fine for people to connect with you on LinkedIn, or like, can I
Yeah,
share your
at the
link?
very least, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you might get answers to your question organically. So
Sounds good. And I also just linked Entry Level's Discord if you're not already in it. It's really fun vibe. You get like job alerts, and then there's like a meme channel. So all these links will be included in the email and show notes. Okay, so I think that's all the questions, but is there anything, like any words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with today, Anthony?
Nothing, jumps off the top of my mind. Really just, take your time, be kind to yourself. I wanted to sprint through my own progress, but it really is like a long game thing, and you should take your time when going through this. It's not going to happen in a day, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people need to hear. Just like as long as you consistently take small steps and actions, you'll get there one day. You don't have to rush through it because you're gonna overwhelm yourself. Is that like progressive overload or?
Yeah, the cognitive overload. Yeah, if you like try too much at once, you will overload yourself for sure,
Okay.
because you won't even be able to like absorb what you've learned, right? If you like read an entire book in a day, have you really like fully taken that book in? Have you taken your time with it to internalize the things that you learned from it? Or did you just like binge an entire show of TV and you don't even remember what happened?
Yeah, that's so true. Thanks so much for sharing, Anthony.
Of
And
course.
yeah, so all the links are in the chat. I'll also email it out to you along with the recording. And the coupon code is Conta, capital
Mhm.
C, and all the links are there. I think that's everything we needed to cover today. So thank you everyone for coming, and thanks, Anthony, for all your wonderful analogies and sharing your insights.
Of course, yeah. Glad y'all enjoyed it.